I would like to call to order this Monday, February 1st meeting of the Ascension Parish Council's Finance Committee. If you would please stand with me and Councilman Cluott, who will lead us in the, Councilman Cagnolati, who will lead us in the invocation, followed by the pledge.
Awesome. Heavenly Father, listen to our prayer and guide this council. Do what is right for the citizens of Ascension Parish. We ask that you bless every man, woman, and child that lives here, and help us to conduct the business of the parish in an honorable and respectable way. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cagnolati. We appreciate that. At this time, I would like to mention that there are no chairs additions to the agenda. However, I'm going to ask that everyone be very patient tonight with our meeting, as we will be, particularly those members of this committee, as we will be removing some items for consideration that we want to do a little more work before we actually bring them to the committee. We're going to be working with the parish president and the finance department and others in relevance to those items as we move along in the next days or weeks. Also, I would like to mention that there is a public comment period, and if anyone has any comment that they would like to make on any agenda item, they may sign in with the secretary and do so at the appropriate time. Everyone is present this evening, and so we'll move from now to item number 5, an update on the 2016-17 property and casualty insurance renewal. Mr. Harry Robert. Hi, Harry. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And if it's in order, Councilwoman, I'd like to congratulate our new parish president, along with the new councilman, and of course also the prior councilman. We appreciate your sacrifice and your commitment. And I look forward to another 4 years, with you. Appreciate the opportunity of working for you. Well, it's that time again, and the good news, I guess, is that it's going to cost us a little bit less than it did last year. Unfortunately, fortunately, we were able to have some new facilities in town, which increased the values, but even with the increased values, our overall insurance program, had a considerable decrease, about a 10% decrease. You see the table of contents. First of all, you see the companies that we solicited for all the quotes, the history of the rates going back about 7, 8 years, policy information, and this is just highlights. And then I'll have the property changes, just to highlight the differences from the expiring policy year to the upcoming year. Page 3 will show you the different companies that we approached to give us a submittal in both the property and the casualty. In approaching 30-plus companies, we had the majority of them decline because we just didn't fit in their portfolio. But we did have good quotes with about 13, 14 different companies, which is exciting. Page 4 gives you a breakdown of the charges for each particular classification. And if you look underneath the yellow section of that particular page, it'll show you that our wholesale provider is Brown & Brown. We've been dealing with Brown & Brown for the last 6 or 7 years. And also some of the major insurers that we use is Barclay and AmRisk. Okay. Barclay and AmRisk also came in with the most favorable quotes for this coming year. Our automobile had a slight increase from 89 to 92. General liability from 102 to 15. Public officials went about the same, $100 increase. Employee benefits about the same. Employee-related practices about the same. Crime about the same. Boiler machinery about the same. The most significant decrease was in the property. Even though we had a sizable increase in the values, the property rate, property premium decreased. And then further on, I'll show you exactly what those figures were. Okay. So the total premium for last year was $780, and this year is $711. Okay. For the general liability, and the related package type policies. Then the workman's compensation premium is a 2-year policy, and that premium is the same as last year's, $61,000. And of course, that's audited at the end of each period. So it just depends on what the payroll is, and whether you're going to get an increase, in premium on that particular segment. The property, the terrorism on the property went down $4,000 or $5,000, and the terrorism on the equipment and the GL remained basically about the same. So the total expenditure for everything involved is roughly about a $75,000 decrease, and that was provided. The fees for the agent and the TPA, which is the third-party administrator, are the same, and they have been the same for the last 12, 15 years, and we're both happy with that. To give you a little idea about what the program consists of, you see in line 16, we have, I guess at this time, if y'all would like, I'd give y'all a little overview about the mechanics of our program. We have what you call a partially self-insured program, which means, we accept a large portion of the claims of any type of issue that we have in the automobile, in the general liability, and the property, also in the workman's compensation. Self-insured retention on the automobile and the GL is $100,000. The self-insured retention on the workman's compensation is $575,000, and on the property is $50,000. Now, what we do in our self-insured program, partially self-insured program, we get the rates for a first dollar type program, okay? And we compare those with the rates of the partially self-insured program. And we take the particular savings and go on to the high deductibles in the self-insured portion, and then we use that to fund our loss fund. And all the claims are paid out of the loss fund. And so far, as long as we've been doing this in 20-plus years, I don't think we've ever had to supplement the loss fund. So the program in itself is a success. Okay? And even sometimes, Gwen might tell you, it even kind of robs some of the loss fund, Gwen? Yeah. But anyway, so on page 5, the named insured, and of course this is a concern with everybody because the parish is a conglomerate and have a lot of entities and a lot of moving parts to it. So we have one of the most comprehensive definitions of the named insured that you can possibly have on a policy. And you can read that and see exactly what that offers you. The valuation of all the facilities that we have and the property is on a replacement cost basis, which means they'll pay the payment of the loss or repair to replace like, kind, and quality. Okay? The property form of loss is the most comprehensive you can have, which is a special form. And what that does, it covers everything comprehensively except a few things that are excluded. And some of the primary exclusions are flood and earthquake. However, with the carrier that we have now, we have a $5 million flood and earthquake provision, which is highly unusual in this day and age. That's included in our package plan. Okay. Co-insurance is waived. Sometimes companies or situations are severely punished because of a co-insurance clause, which means that you may be underinsured in a particular building and things of that nature. Well, we had them to waive our co-insurance. So we can get up to the maximum that each building is insured on, regardless of what the value escalates to or whether it's underinsured or whatever the deal is. Some of the reasons for the increases in the valuation of the property I have listed on page 6. The total property value in the expiring policy is a little over $91 million, and the upcoming year policy is $118 million. So you got about $26 million increase, in values. And if you just go down to the bottom of that page, you see how that's accounted for. The Lamar Dixon solar panels was $1.5 million. The Ascension Parish Government Complex was $8.1. We had the DPW on the west side was $1.3 million. Then, of course, we had the 2 pumping stations that we increased the value of, and the insurable amount on those, because most of it's concrete, is about half of the actual expenditures. So of the $15 million, we actually probably insure about 7 of each one of them. So that accounts for the $26 million increase in the values that we actually insured at a decrease in rate. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to explain anything now or later. That all?
Ms. Caswell.
Hang on one second. Let me close my book up here so I can look up. Councilman Joseph.
Yeah, I was just wondering on the automobile schedule, the total numbers, there is the total number of vehicles we have, that's what you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Chap,
Mr. Lawler.
With regards to the named insureds, does that also include appointees, whether it be to the Board of Adjustments, Planning and
Right.
Zoning Commission?
Right, everybody's working on behalf of the parish. That's right.
Any other questions? Mr. President.
Mr. Robert, this deal like earthquake, does that have to do with like a building sinking and cracking?
Well-
If that happens, does that fall under like the earthquake?
Well, it just depends on the nature of the incident. If it's because of inferior construction,
I'm talking about older buildings, or, you know, like they say when it's dry, the trees suck the water out of the roads and stuff, and they crack and all that.
well, you have certain type provisions, but all of it is subject to evaluation as to what actually caused the collapse. So if it can be deemed something as an earthquake, which is tremor, movement of the earth, it would be
Okay.
covered. And if it would be some type of flood that probably caused the support of the building and everything to deteriorate, you have some flood protection. So it's hard to give you a carte blanche answer on any particular situation if we know the specifics of it. But you do have coverage, under some instances for a collapse.
And I just want to say that I appreciate all the work the Robad Group does with the parish, and in every area, in every aspect, they do a great job. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you,
President.
Mr.
Any other
President.
questions? Mr. Satterley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. President, how many employees do we have in the parish?
Well, I was looking for that. I'll tell you what, I'll give it to you at the next meeting because I want it classified as how many umpires and firemen and all. I'm trying to sift through all of that to get the correct number of actual employees.
Yes, sir, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I was a little bit disturbed about that number of cars at 309 that we
We-
insure.
Right now, I'm
I'm
looking
being
at.
told we may have like 400 employees, and my question would be, does every one of them
No,
have a
sir.
car?
No, sir, but for your knowledge, right now, every department is, I'm going through checking the vehicle list. In fact, we have Mr. Depew here tonight. We have 309?
Yeah, there's 309 with the work feeder trucks, dump trucks.
And that's fire trucks and all that stuff too?
No,
No, okay. So he knows, he's the fleet manager. But we're going through every department right now on why somebody needs a vehicle and stuff like that.
I appreciate that, thank you.
And Harry, how would that impact if let's say the parish president made a 50% reduction in the number of people driving cars home every day, how would that affect our insurance rate?
Well, it would decrease your exposure a lot because we self-insured underneath the physical damages of the automobile. As far as the liability is concerned, it would make a big difference in the number when you get over probably 250 or anything of that nature, It's just, they look at it as the overall operation of the parish. And they know that they're going to have, a bunch of vehicles involved in it. And rather than using one vehicle with half the mile of mileage, if you put two of them, so it's really not totally significant as far as the premium is concerned if the number increases from, 200 to 300. It's going to be a difference in it, but I don't think probably it's going to make a third of the difference in your automobile premium prices.
Correct. I understand that. Thank you
Okay.
very much. Mr. Lawler?
Go ahead.
Does the premium get affected by the number of take-home vehicles versus the number of vehicles that are required to stay?
No. Again, it increases your exposure. And of course, you have your self-insured retention, which probably has a lot to do with the exposure that you have.
Mr. Kluwat?
Yeah, Harry, just looking at the trends on the on the terrorism being separated. Do y'all see the trends of that continuing to be separated more and more and more?
Yeah, Mr. Cluett, and then.
Because I saw something on this a year ago, and then I've seen a couple of specials on it, and it's just getting to where it's detailed down to where the insurance companies are trying to cover themselves in every direction for every type of incident that happens.
Exactly.
So they already got it in 3 categories, you know what I mean?
Exactly. And then, what had happened, I guess probably 8 or 10 years ago, they threw it in, just like they did the flood and earthquake, And then what happened after that, and also the federal government, when you had some type of catastrophic loss or something like that, they would come in, and they offered a lot of coverages. But then it became so much of a burden on the federal government, they started requiring the municipalities, your local houses, to carry their own terrorism insurance, So if something would happen and you're not properly covered with it, and you have significant penalties before they can respond as they did in the past. That's one of the reasons why we have to start carrying a little bit more broader type coverage with the terrorism.
Yeah, because like I said, I do know the underwriters are constantly looking at where the most money's going, so they're looking for
Exactly.
somebody else to cover it independently.
And
And
then,
taking it out of a general policy.
exactly. And then they continually broadening the definition of terrorism also. So that gives more exposure, more payouts, and so they have, costing insurance companies are insured more money, so they have to kind of cover them.
That
And
was,
I just, on the amount of employees insured by the parish, that Doc had asked for the number. A good explanation would be is how many people that we have in other departments other than parish government that are covered under the umbrella of the parish insurance.
Parish insurance.
And we have some other departments that are covered.
Right.
I think the judges chambers. I think there's some of the people in
Some of the
other
secretaries,
departments
there's
other
a
than
lot
parish
of-
government
yeah.
that's covered under
Yep,
under
there's a lot of them.
our umbrella, per se.
Yeah, all of them are not at the DPW.
Right.
Just, that's the first thing you would think.
I'm just trying I want to clear that up for everybody.
Right, I got you.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
So, if I have any questions or anything, I'd appreciate the opportunity to renew with the same companies, the same carriers, as outlined, with the proposal.
so at this time, I would be looking for a motion to that effect.
Motion.
I have a motion by Councilman Johnson, second by Councilman Cluott. Are there any further questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes.
And again, if anybody ever has any questions, anything, just don't hesitate to give me a call or drop by the office. I'll be happy to give you an explanation. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Item number 6 has been removed from the agenda tonight. Move on to item number 7, renewal of the Cartograph OMS agreement for annual software maintenance in the amount of $50,000. Our technology manager, Mr. Brandon O'Day.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening. This is an annual contract for the Cartograph OMS system used by our utilities department, drainage, DPW. This is the request and work order system with what keeps them organized when they're out in the field doing public works tasks and drainage tasks.
Have a motion by Councilman Johnson, a second by Councilman Cluott. Any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Thank you, sir. Item number 8, the renewal of the intergovernmental agreement between the Parish of Ascension and the Ascension Parish Sheriff's Office to provide inmate labor to perform work at the Lamar Dixon Expo Center, $79,391.94. Ms. Flo McGee. Welcome, Ms. Flo.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thank you. This is our annual agreement with the Sheriff's Office for use of the inmates. And it's just that because they help us tremendously at Lamar Dixon with the maintenance.
Second.
Have a motion by Councilman Dempsey Lambert, a second by Councilman Randy Cluott. Any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Flo.
Thank you.
Item number 9, master contract for professional services with Gulf South Engineering and Testing for the 2015 road maintenance construction testing, not to exceed $49,900. Tracy Ravelet. Good evening, Tracy.
Good evening. All of our retainer contracts ended on December 31st, so we currently don't have a geotechnical testing firm with a contract to do our testing for the 2015 road maintenance package. So Gulf South will be able to provide all the testing we need for the road maintenance package for this year. So they'll be able to provide all that for under $49,900. So that's what this contract will do, set them up and get them ready to go.
Motion.
I have a motion by Councilman Kluat, second do I have a second? Councilman by Councilman Cagnolotti, and now questions.
Yes.
Mr. Joseph.
Right. I don't know if we did renew though, but I know we normally have 3 top professional service contractors, like to say companies that put out for RFQ for.
Right, anything
and-
over 50,000, I think is normally the cutoff for putting out an RFQ. So once I found out that the reason why we're using them is because they provide testing for the 2013 road maintenance package, so they're very familiar with what we need and what we require for our roads. So they're able to do it, for approximately $1,200 to $1,300 a road, which will come in pretty well under $50,000. So that's why we chose to go ahead and move forward with them.
But we do have 2 other companies that is on that.
Yes, sir. Yes,
professional.
sir. But we didn't put out an RFQ because it was under 50,000. But yes, sir, we do. We had gotten 2 other companies prior to this.
Okay. Thank.
And this is not to exceed, but it
That's
is not a
correct. That's
contract
correct.
for
That's-
49.
that's correct.
I understand that.
Madam Chairman, is this a similar contract to what we heard from drainage from Bill, that you just kind of task as something comes up, you call them and they'll
No, sir.
do a task order?
I wasn't here for that. I'm assuming that might have been a retainer contract where you just kind of write them tasks for different. We're able to. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he's able to use the same company but on different projects. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
This will
Yeah.
be specifically for the 2015 road maintenance project. They won't be able to do any work for us on any other project.
Did I see other hands over there, gentlemen? Any other questions? All right. Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item number 10, the professional services contract with C.W. Bill McCord for consultant services not to exceed $48,000. Parish President Matassa.
Thank you. If you look at the scope of work, I gave y'all the resume on Mr. McCord, and you go down to the scope of work, you see what I'm having him do right now. He's in the 2nd department right now going through, and he's going to examine each department and, look at each employee, responsibilities, and, try to give me a report on each one of them. If we get to the point that we need a company to come in and do assessments, he will recommend that to me, and I will come to you on that. But he can do a number of things, and what I have him under contract by monthly, and if it finishes earlier than that, then we're done with it. But he can do all kind of other things. If you look down at assisting, and he can do all kind of policy changing or whatever we might need him to work on. He works well with Mr. Billy Osmo, which I have a smaller contract with to do team building and different things with our departments. And if he also can run a department if somebody would move on or whatever, and he can do all kind of duties in that area. So I just spread it out over a year because in case I need him, if there's a month I don't need him, I don't pay him. But it's very reasonable, and like I say, he works good with Billy Osmo in the past, and I kind of got him together doing some things, positive things with our employees. He is here tonight if y'all need to ask any questions. His resume is there, and the scope of work is the main thing.
I think, should we have Mr. McCord perhaps come up so we can?
I have
Right.
questions for the
At this
President.
moment, Mr. McCord, if you'll give us just 1 second, a couple of folks have questions for the parish president, and then others might have questions for you. Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Terry. My first question is, how did this contract come to fruition? How did you name come up? I haven't seen any RFQs or RFPs come up with your name. This is really my first time hearing or seeing anything about this besides when I guess the email came out for the finance agenda.
I have worked with him in the past, and I've asked him to do this for me. And in fact, I talked with him and Mr. Arsenal, and that's how it came to be. And I didn't. It's under the $50,000 RFQ RFP situation, so that's why I didn't think I needed to do that. I did send it to you because I don't have a contract yet. I mean, Arsenal's was 24,000, and this one was 48,000.
Well, I guess my follow-up question to that is then, I know we did change the authority to sign the contracts to 25,000. And so I'm assuming when he got his contract for 48, it was still under the assumption that the authority was going to be 50. So I do have a slight problem with the contract, and that it didn't go out for a request for proposals or qualifications. And it's an individual, it's not a company. And I know there's quite a few companies that do this type of work. And if he does something that's not legal or something of that nature, the type of liability that can fall into the parish being that he's an individual and not a company who's insured. And I think we still do have Mr. Harry Robert here. I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that by being a contractor, that the parish insurance does not cover him, correct?
Come to the microphone.
No, it don't.
Corporation or himself personally. He should have individual insurance if he's performing work for the parish, Otherwise, the parish, when you get audited, you'd have to go back and pick up the payroll, and you'd have to pay for workers' compensation and other type coverages.
And exactly, and what we're looking at here is a professional service contract. So he's not an employee of the parish, correct?
Correct.
So he will need some type of insurance, correct?
Done that before.
He's doing consulting work. All he's doing is making recommendations to me to look at that what I would come to y'all on.
I know, but there was also said that he's already on the second department already, so he
Well,
started working already.
He went, I asked him to go into Lamar Dixon with me because I have something going on over there, and he did that he's not charging me, okay? And I understand what you're saying. And I asked him to do that because I was going to come to y'all with a report on that.
Okay.
That I would not ready to give tonight.
So I guess the question wasn't still fully answered. Will he need general liability for the work that he's doing?
No. I drafted the contract, no. He's just doing consulting for the parish president.
So
he's not doing anything, he's not acting on behalf of the parish in any way.
Well, my point is, if he's going to be evaluating these departments, and I'm going to assume he's going to evaluate these departments, he should have some type of recommendations made after he has evaluated any particular department. And if that department does institute any of those evaluations or anything he suggested, and if they don't meet the code, we could be held liable for that.
Meet what codes?
Well, any type of work requirements, or if he institutes something that could be held that seems to be racist, discriminatory, if he institutes it on his recommendation.
All he's doing is making a recommendation to the parish president. To amend any of the policies would have to require to come back to you to amend the policies, and we review those.
What would be fine is it?
So,
well, if they're not legal, I'm not going to recommend you do them.
Well, I'm going to assume you're not going to recommend to do it if it's legal. Well, I guess my question is then, by just being an individual, why wouldn't it went out for maybe an employment contract or a job opening? Why are we doing it under the professional service contract at that point then? 'Cause if I'm not mistaken, when we have those trucking contracts come through, they have to have liability insurance, correct?
Right, because they haul in trucks on the road.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the parish could be held liable, correct?
Because they're doing our work.
All right, so he is doing the parish work, so to me
No, he's not. He's not doing our work. He's evaluating those to give the parish president recommendations. I think it's a big difference of putting a truck on the road and going to look at a department and say, hey, this is what I suggest.
Yes, but you're asking him to institute procedures and policies.
No, we're not. He's going to make recommendations to the parish
I would come to
president.
you
No,
with
it's
any kind
up
of
to you to
changes.
make those changes.
If I see fit.
Mr. Dawson.
Mr. President, I just wanted to, you talked about maybe bringing in actually an organization or a company to do an efficiency evaluation. Is that correct?
Possibly, I wanted him to do a overview of each department for me, and then I was gonna get with a committee or whatever of you guys and discuss it further.
Well, as we talked about earlier, I think it's important if we're gonna really do an efficiency evaluation, that be done by an independent company that specializes in this. Nothing against Mr. McCord, but,
That's what I do, actually.
but I would like to see, I'm like, Mr. Turner, I would like to see the qualifications of you up against, people that, large companies that do that for a living, and
I don't think if you look at my
I'm
resume.
talking to the parish president at this time.
Excuse me.
But I feel like that we should at least, and if it's okay with me if he coordinates that, but I think we should look at bringing a company in that will actually do an efficiency evaluation, look at our overall, we have 400 employees, and we have, it's a very large job.
Well, Mr. Dawson, I was getting him to do an overview of everything, and then I was gonna get with a committee to go, any further. But I was trying to get moving, and I've worked with this man before, and like I told you, after he does an overview of the departments, then I would get with a committee on possible
Yeah,
next
well,
step.
like I said, I didn't have a problem, but I'd like to see if in fact they approve the contract, that one of his early tasks is to start looking at actually companies that do these types of evaluations, so we can get an RFQ out to do that.
We can do that, but I wanted to wait till he kind of does an overview of each department.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Mr. Kluwat.
Yeah, this is for the parish president also. Is Kenny, I don't have a problem with Billy, Bill, whoever. I would like to see it task orientated, okay? It's not necessarily an employee. I do looking at the scope. Now, so look down at the scope you'd written up, okay? Your first 1, 2, 3, 4 items, with your fifth item that says temporarily manage any department when need arises.
Would you have to be an employee then?
That's what I'm talking about. So I don't think within this scope today, that.
Well, you can scratch that.
Well,
He
that's what
can do
we'd
that
like
type
for you
of
to
thing,
agree
is
that
what I'm
that's
saying.
not
But
what
he
you
would
want
have to
to.
be an employee at that time.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. So, but that's the paper we got in front of us. So that's, I just want to make clear that to some of my council members. You wish to, that's not necessarily what you're asking for today.
This is really items that he can do. Did I
Yeah.
ask him to do that? No. But if, like I told you, if he does an overview of each department, then we're gonna meet in things that I want to change or whatever, I'll come to you guys. And even after,
I understand it. That's the only, I don't have a problem with the consultant. That's your choice. You're coming forward with stuff you'd like to improve, and we've asked you to.
yes, sir.
Most of the council members have asked you to do this, to go
Right.
ahead and take a look at every department. Let's see the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's see where we can improve. I just looked at, under the consulting, under the realm bill of you consulting is not necessarily consulting as a manager of a department.
Correct.
That's, I think that would be a line that I think even our council would agree
It's not in the
with.
scope of work in the contract. I'm looking at
It's
the
not,
contract.
this is just things he
Look at the
can
scope
do,
of work.
really?
Scope of work, no, the scope of work is the contract, is to
I'm
examine
looking
each
at the
department.
paper that was handed to me.
Oh, I
Yes,
don't know, I didn't hand that,
Here
I
you
did the
go.
contract.
I gave that to y'all because this is things he can do.
Right. I would like to see it specifically say that he cannot at any time function as a department, as an employee. I mean, I don't think it's correct, and this is just my personal opinion. I'll seek the agreement of my fellow members of this commission, but I cannot imagine having someone come in, assess a department, and members of that department, quite frankly, being under the threat that if that person doesn't like the way they're doing things, he might have their job shortly.
Well,
I
I understand
mean,
that.
I don't
understand
think
what you're
that's
saying.
appropriate.
That's no problem. That aspect can be taken out.
That's
He
not
just
in the
put down
contract.
things he can do. It's not in that contract that we drew up.
Okay, well, we need to get, we're working not from his contract, but from a document that was given to us prior to the meeting, and it is in there, so that's all we can work with.
The contract's in the packet.
Well, this is a summary, we understood.
There's a contract in the packet.
That was just something I submitted, that things I could do, but that's not part of the
And
contract.
and I just made a copy of y'all because I give
Okay.
y'all everything.
That's good. I just want to make sure we.
In fact, that was given to me,
Only one I wanted to bring out.
not in the contract.
Right,
You're
Mr.
right,
Lawler
Mr.
had a
Cruikshank.
question.
That's all right. I'm good with it.
Yes, first of all, I applaud you, Mr. President, because this is something that we've talked about, creating a more efficient government. Part of my concern are two things. Redundancy. To have Mr., and I want to get the name correctly, McCord, to do an overview, and then we go get somebody else, they're going to do the same overview. I don't believe that if we hired an efficiency expert, they would come in and use Mr. McCord's information. It seems redundant. The other part of it is, and I guess I'll let you respond to that first.
Well, first of all, we have a lot of small departments that I probably wouldn't bring this big company in to do. And I mean, like I said, I'm going to give y'all a report on Lamar Dixon, which he has went there and done, and we're not finished with the whole process. And when y'all see this, you're going to see what I'm talking about. And the reason we did it month to month, because if I don't need him anymore, I don't need him. But I mean, that's why I did it month to month and not just a total $48,000 contract. You know, I want to use him when I need him. And right now, he's doing an assessment to see what would be my next step would be to come to one of your committees, probably strategic planning or whatever, and go from there.
I think my other question would be to you, Mr. McCord, is as far as technology goes. Part of what I'd like to see is an overall assessment of the parish, our protocols, and everything we do, and how we can combine better technology and expand our use of technology to improve that.
You know, I would say technology is really not what I bring to the table. You know, my background is, 40-plus years of human resource management and chemical plant management in other areas as well, but technology, no. So, I'm talking to people that are dealing with technology now, and I'd be happy to help if I thought I was qualified, but I don't.
I see you have some experience with the
Excuse me
parish.
one second, Councilman, if I may. I've tasked our IT person to look into, we are getting ready to do some upgrades in technology, and in fact, he's got a trip tomorrow to EBR, and we're going to move in that area, but that's his area, and I'm not tasking Mr. McCord to look at that part of it. So if you want to ask him questions, he can tell you where we at, looking at, software.
Let's wait on that. I think
Kind of going all
Stay
over
on
the place.
topic, please.
I think we're
Stay on
chasing
topic.
rabbits here,
All right.
and we don't need to
Okay.
chase that one right now.
I just wanted you to know that that's being done.
Absolutely. We thank you for that information, but we don't want to get down that. Okay, Mr. Todd Lambert.
Yeah, Bill, one of your previous employment was with the Ascension Parish, correct?
Yeah.
In the HR department?
Right.
And I guess, Parish President, I'm just got a little concerned that a lot of the employees when Bill was here, are still here, and could that be a conflict if he steps in and say, okay, I don't know if you had any bad terms when you was here before, but, that's just how things flow, and it's just.
He's looking at the departments. He's
Only-
not looking at names.
He's not looking at personnel,
No,
just the
sir.
departments.
No, sir.
And Mr. Lambert, I was HR director for 3 months.
Okay.
And, I don't remember any conflicts at that time.
But that's what he's doing, looking at not no names, but
Okay.
in the jobs.
Mr. Cagnalotti, do you have any questions? I share some of your concerns, Aaron, about redundancy, so I will mention that one. I think that if at some point we get to the month down the road, and Mr. McCord suggests that we need a large company to come in and do an analysis like Mr. Dawson suggested, that we're going to be doing the same thing all over again. So I will speak that as a council person, I share that concern. Mr. Joseph?
I guess that was my biggest concern during this whole process. I mean, I know Bill and had no, but once again, we're talking about this parish government. One of my concerns is that we get a fair evaluation from a firm that have many years of experience, have municipality experience. And I know me and the president spoke about this here before. And, you know, I hate to say it that I've been here for 9 years and we have never got evaluation of this government. Never. And if Mr. Bill McCoy, you wanted Mr. President again, but I would make a substitute motion in this process here, says we talking about evaluation, that we make my motion to go out for a RFQ to get a consultant firm, a major consultant firm on this here.
First,
And he
we
can
would-
work with him as a
Mr. Joseph.
consultant for the parish president. But as far as me as a councilman, I see we need a major firm to come in here and do this evaluation.
So, Mr. Joseph, if you will, if we're ready to, I think we have maybe one more question that Mr. Satterley would like to ask. After that, the chair would entertain a motion regarding the item on the agenda, whether or not to hire Mr. McCord. And then we would also welcome a substitute motion at that point to do something differently if we don't want to go all the way to a vote on the hiring of Mr. McCord. Okay? So, Mr. Satterley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And two things. First of all, I would like to tell Mr. Matassa that I appreciate what he's trying to do. It's been already said here, but I think it deserves repeating that, you know, many members, myself included, have discussed with our new parish president the possibility of getting rid of government waste, the possibility of increasing efficiency, but all in the name, obviously, of a fair practice. And I'm sure Mr. Matassa wants that as well. But what I'm hearing from my colleagues up and down, and I just want this in the record, that I concur, particularly with the remarks made by Councilman Dawson that sort of began this discussion. I share for the various reasons, so I'm not going to repeat them and be redundant here, you know, his concerns. This council has already decided that we had some problems in the past with, and I think we're under the public scrutiny eye in this regard, heavily so, with just having had an election, given the power to our previous administration to do $50,000 contracts. And so if tonight, and of course we probably wouldn't even be hearing about it, and that'd be fine too, if we were doing a $25,000 contract or below, like was going on with Mr. Awesome that was mentioned, I would have no problem with that. Moving up to the higher level now, the $48,000 contract, that's sort of open-ended. I realize it could be a lot less, or it could be for every month all the way out to get to that number, whatever. But I would, as Mr. Dawson said, be more comfortable with competition. And Mr. McCord, this is nothing against you. Obviously, I don't know you, sir. You may be the best things in sliced bread, apple pie, and Chevrolet. But, you know, the RFQ and RFP process would be good. I do also take one exception of everything I've heard here tonight, and that is I've heard that this is about departments and not people. And I would just pose a very simple question about that. How do you look at departments without looking at names? And I'm using, that's someone else's words here tonight, quote unquote, names within those departments. I would submit that they're almost one and the same, because the people are the departments, and they're either doing a good job or they need redirection, or maybe they, you know, it's a tough business. As a college professor retired after 30-something years, I served under 6 or 8 department heads, just like new parish presidents. And some people inside of my department would get pay raises. Some would get walk-in papers. Others would get a technique I called counseling out, which would dry up the individuals, the administration would resources to make them want to leave. And I truly realize and have appreciation for that we are a serve at will state. I've heard that from legal before. I do realize to the victor belongs the spoils, and particularly this parish president, as anyone who would have been elected of the other 4 that ran, would have the same privilege and responsibility to have loyal and efficient employees working for them. So I have no problem with any of that and how it happens. But since we sort of asked for this, now we're sitting here, we do have the purse and so forth and so on. I think it might be a little bit better if we just take a little deep breath and see if we're going to be, you know, getting the best bang for the buck, so to speak. And also, to a lesser extent, I'm not sure if I'm satisfied with all the discussion I've heard to Mr. Turner's questions about liability. I'm one of a mind that attorneys can sue anybody over anything. And if there's anything I can do to kind of keep that at bay, I certainly would like to see that with taxpayer dollars, we're doing that. I think liability, and I'm not an attorney, could be an issue here if we get into a point to where some disgruntled person winds up as a result of this process, looking at a department, not a name, getting fired, and then comes back and says, you know what? I think they discriminate against me because of the color of my skin or whatever the reason might be. So I would feel a lot more comfortable if we had someone that does this a whole lot and has, I don't know, some sort of insurance on top of what we have or don't have or that sort of thing. But I thank everyone for listening.
I'm going to indulge the council chair with one more question, and then we'll move on. And then, Mr. President, Mr. Parish President would like to speak. Randy?
I'm not a lawyer either. I admit that. First step to recovery. But I don't disagree. I think we've all challenged the parish president to try to take a look and look at all departments. I know of the work that Billy Orsmon's done. I know of the work that Bill McCord's done in the past. I've been knowing him a long time also, just like Mr. Joseph and several people up here. If it's palatable to this council that, you know, if we looking at, I know that I want to express that I don't think what Bill's going to do and what Billy Orsmon's going to do is going to be drilled down. It's going to be more of a 10,000-foot level look. And when you go to get the big company, you better be ready to write the check when he comes back with it, okay? Seriously. But I don't have a problem if we want to cut this in half or whatever and stay with the 25 or 24 for 6 months. Mr. McCord may have a problem with that.
I don't.
No, and it wasn't his.
But
I'm
I
doing it
think
for
that,
nothing now.
I think within that realm, Parish President, that you may be able to take a look and get an overall view of where you want to go from here and come back to us.
Well, Mr. Cluart, let me tell you, he didn't tell me he needed to work 12 months. He told me when he worked, he would charge me $4,000 a month. I said, well, let's just do a year contract in case I need you, when or whatever. He did not ask for a specific amount of money. When he worked in a month, he wanted, that was $4,000. Now, Billy Osmore, he's got all kind of stuff going on, and he didn't want to work past 6 months. Mm-hmm. He's got a lot of things going on, and he's doing this as a favor to me, and him and Bill have worked in many other instances. Sure. And Doc Sally, I just want you to know, it's not, I didn't mean it's just a department, it's the position, not the name. Of whatever that guy does, it's the position he'd be looking at, not the person. That's what I meant on that. And, I just think that, I'm asking y'all to let me hire this man, and if y'all want to cut that contract in half, that'll be fine. And whatever y'all want to do, this is your call.
I would offer that in form of a motion for 6 months, which would give it a total of 24,000, excuse me.
Have
I'm
a
also
motion
not a math
that
teacher.
it be, that,
Well, you got the motion, Mr.
excuse me, I'm still on Mr. Joseph's motion.
Mr. Joseph didn't offer the motion, I don't believe. Or did
My
he?
motion's still saying that we go out.
Did you have a second?
Okay,
And I second that motion.
Okay.
yes, we had a second. So
We
would
had
you
that authority
clarify for
right
me
here,
what the
so
motion
I'm-
was, please?
You're right.
Okay, what you do with this?
Well, that's not, it's out of order. You
Okay.
can't- you
Well, that's
can't
what
make
I
that
thought.
motion
So
at
we're
this
gonna
meeting.
try to-
This is a finance committee meeting, and you got a motion on a contract. You've got to act on that contract, and then if you want to amend the agenda to do something differently, you can do that. If you want to amend this contract, that's a different story, but you can't change the whole scope of the meeting without having a unanimous vote of the committee to do it.
Correct. All right, so we are voting at this point. We have a motion to approve this item number 10, Mr. McCord's consultant contract not to exceed $48,000. we have to make a motion on that, and we have to have a second, and we have to either vote that up or down, and then we'll go on to the next, or we can have a substitute.
No, the substitute
No,
motion
you
regarding this
substitute
particular contract is germane to this particular issue.
Okay,
I'll take
You
it.
need a second for your,
all right, so somebody, I mean, I've gotten lost here, and I apologize. Somebody tell me what
you need a
what the-
second to your
what is the sec-
substitute motion.
What is the substitute motion?
I believe that Randy had a substitute motion to amend the contract to be 6 months, still at $4,000 a month.
Okay, I'm sorry.
second that.
And Benny
Benny
has seconded that. Now, do we have any further questions about that, or can we please go to a vote? We have two questions. Mr. Satterley?
And I realize, a point of order, if we vote on this substitute motion, then it's almost moot, because why do we need a motion if it's under 25,000? The president can just go ahead and do this. Am I wrong thinking there?
Well, I think it would give him,
I think it's clarity.
it's,
Well, I'm not objecting to that vote, but I mean, he could have come in here and just done that
he
without
could
even
have.
telling us.
He could have, and we would have been asked at some point to approve
Okay.
that. So I would like to go ahead and either approve or not that at this time.
I appreciate that, Madam Chairman.
Mr. Turner?
I guess just for clarification purposes, so if we follow Mr. Kluat's motion and cut the contract in half, we're at 24,000. That means in 6 months, if we decide to, well, now it wouldn't be we at that point, so if the parish president decides to renew it, he wouldn't need our approval, correct? So then at that point, we're back to a $48,000 contract that's slipped by?
No, he would need your approval.
He would need
He
it?
cannot go above $25,000 on
A year.
In
particular
one
contract.
year,
year.
for the same
Year.
services, yeah.
But he could.
And I
Chairman?
guess my question is, for the same service, would have to be that if they just, playing devil advocate, if they take the contract and just change a few scopes in it, would it be considered a different contract?
It would depend on what, I mean, it would depend on what it is. Like, depends on, if he hired him to do something differently, it could be, but it may or may not be.
Yeah, I'm just saying, if they change the word and, delete this word, add this word, strike this word, add a paragraph, is it a different contract, so does it not have to come back to us at that point?
If it
Mr.
goes
President.
past
Depends on
20
what the, I
Mr.
can't
Turner,
give you a
I'm not going to
speculative
circumvent the law.
proposal.
I'm not trying to do that. And I heard what you're saying, and besides him taking that look at these departments, I will have him help me craft out an RFQ for a company. But I would like him to help me in getting all of this stuff straight. Now, I'm not going to circumvent the law on changing a couple words in his contract. I'm not going to do that.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Mr. Dawson?
Well, I just wanted to make one more comment and say that, again, we can accomplish both of these things, and when we can have this 6-month contract, and then we can go in and have Mr. McCord and yourself start working on this RFQ to go out and get a larger company and an independent company to come in and do an overall evaluation.
Right.
Okay. So, with the motion and the second, do I have any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Thank you, gentlemen, for the lively discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCord, Mr. President. Item number 11, the monthly contract report.
Good evening. You have your, before you, the contract report for all the contracts that were entered into in the month of January. Let you look over it if you have any questions.
Does anyone have any questions, gentlemen?
Yes, I got a quick question.
Mr. Kluot?
Just a point of clarification, we talk about what we allow the parish president to go without coming in front of the council, the dollar value. Don't at some point we see every contract that he puts in front of us?
Every contract that's done is,
We-
y'all know of.
we
Now, they may have a
discussed-
contract in existence, but yes.
No,
he
but
has
that's
the
what I'm saying,
authority
we
to-
discussed this last
You'll
year.
see it
We
right.
discussed it when we talked about the amount, and that at some point in this meeting, every contract that's issued comes in front of us
That's correct.
to take a look at and question.
Mhm.
We may not be able to do anything about it right then, but we can do something about it in the next month. But
Correct.
it comes in front of us, so that's clarity. That's all.
That's right.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Mr. Johnson?
Looking at number 4, the access communications, was that from last year?
Yes.
Because it's, okay, 'cause it's above the amount.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
All the 49.99s are from last year.
Just making sure.
All righty, thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any other questions? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 12, an approval of a resolution, 2015 Louisiana Audit Compliance Questionnaire. Ms. Gwynn?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You have before you a questionnaire that is required by law as part of our audit process. The council is required to adopt this resolution. It's a questionnaire that basically states that we are complying with all laws governing the operations
So
of
moved.
government.
Second.
And we're disclosing all pertinent information to our auditors. And we're issuing the auditors a fair representation of the financial statements of the parish. And it also states that we are complying with the public bid law, the code of ethics law for public officials and public employees, the local government budget act, accounting, auditing, and financial reporting laws, asset management laws, fiscal agency and cash management laws, debt restriction laws, revenue and expenditure restriction laws, road system administration law, and the laws governing drainage districts, fire districts, and other special districts. And also, we're in compliance with our home rule charter.
Thank you,
And the
ma'am.
resolution is attached, I think, in your packets. And it's a very simple resolution. It states, be it resolved that the council of the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, hereby adopts the Louisiana Compliance Questionnaire for the 2015 audit of the government of the Parish of Ascension. Be it further resolved that the Louisiana Compliance Questionnaire be presented to auditors Falk and Winkler, said audit firm approved by the Ascension Parish Council and the State of Louisiana Legislative Auditor.
Thank you, and I have a motion by Councilman Benny Johnson and a second by Councilman Kluwat to approve this resolution. Any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Couldn't get objections to come out. All right. Item number 13. This item will have some, we will go through it, Dawn, you and I, and we will talk a little bit about which ones we are going to actually act upon tonight and which we are going to send back for further discussion.
Councilwoman, when you do this, you're not acting on anything tonight. You can propose it to go, this is an ordinance, so it's going to have to be presented as an ordinance. It's just that they're presenting it to the Finance Committee.
Okay, well, it is not going to be presented in this form, then. There are some things that are going to be taken out of it at this time. Or it's going to not be acted on at all as an ordinance, because there are things that we do not understand and we want more clarification on. So how do you suggest, Mr. Parrington, that we handle that?
Well, this is just the ordinance that's presented to the Finance Committee. I think you can make the recommendations of what you want out of it, and then when the ordinance is permitted, you got to have this is going to be just the normal budget process, but you got to have a public hearing and everything like that.
Okay. So the General Administration Department expenditures will be removed. A line item of $1 million. The Purchasing Department and Finance Department to create a new department will be removed. The whole two sections. The rest of it, I think, unless some of my co-members of this committee have a question, I think can stand. Mr. Turner?
Yeah, I have a problem with the park construction fund. I've never seen that go through recreation. Never seen any discussion of this extra, close to $500,000 like that taken out until we have a chance to review this.
Mr. President, do you understand that?
That 417,000, that's for the soccer fields.
Well, I know it's for the soccer fields now, but there has been no discussion. I don't know why.
Oh, I didn't know anything about it not going to
Yeah, so
recreation.
Yeah, that needs some discussion on that.
Okay, so
Didn't
let's,
know that.
the park construction fund can also come out of there. It's 417. Okay. So now, we have a budget amendment that can be, ordinance that can be read.
Is this something that we can, since we chopping it all up, and,
Delay.
I know that we hadn't all discussed, is something that we can just send back for discussion to come back by next month, Terry? Or do you want to discuss it now, or what?
I think that there is certainly the potential to do that, and however, I would, I would
Does it
seek
have-
the parish president's guidance as well as the CFO about what this might impact if we do not move it, some of it forward tonight.
Well, I don't know what stage we at with the soccer fields, and I thought that was, I thought that was an amount that was in the budget already. I didn't know it didn't go to Recreation Department, but I guess that's gonna hold up the soccer.
Dawn, do you have a recommendation for how we should?
There are some grant items that are strictly a revenue in and an expenditure out that do need to be presented for tonight for this budget amendment.
Okay,
The
anything
rest
else
of the stuff,
critical?
if y'all want to wait and discuss, whatever you want to do.
Okay, I would be comfortable with that. I think that we should hold on to everybody.
Identify
General
which ones
consensus,
that
head
is.
nods here, give me some help, gentlemen.
Can we just identify what's going in and out?
So what we would ask Ms. Martha to identify that. Ms. Martha, what would be going in and out on under grants?
Dawn,
Dawn
Or
will do it.
Dawn? Okay, Dawn can, okay.
Okay, on the first page, do you want me to read the budget ordinance?
Yes.
O'Neill, or you, with just the grant information, or what?
What you gonna keep?
We don't usually read them, but if you can, I mean, that's fine with me, if y'all want to read it.
Well,
We
I don't
seem
think
to
we
know
need
what's
to.
going in.
Just
Yeah, we just need to
Cover the
know,
amounts.
just cover the amount under the grant.
What
You-
page
Okay,
on
I'll
it?
just tell you what is in it as far as the grants. Under the general fund, the first page, the grant, the EPA Lake Pontchartrain, that's revenues of $110,500. Further down on that page, under Planning Development Department, the expenditures is for the same amount, $110,500, which is the expense side of that grant, Lake Pontchartrain Phase 2. On page 3, up at the top of the page, the FEMA Repetitive Loss Reduction Acquisition Elevation Fund. You have the revenues, proceeds from homeowners, $493,000, the grant revenue of $1,477,500, and the corresponding expenditure for that grant for flood mitigation, $1,970,500. $1,970,500. The last one is ACUD number 1, revenue grants of $100,000, and expenditures, appropriations, and grants, $100,000. And that is for a CWEF grant, it's CWEF. I think I'm using it to buy some equipment. And that's it as far as grants.
I'll make the motion to approve as amended.
All right, I have one more question. I understand that this is true of the Planning Department and the Fleet Management Department. Those two areas have salaries for personnel. What is the impact if we do not act upon that tonight in an ordinance?
Mr. Bill's gonna come up, have equipment in there also.
And there's some, yeah, absolutely. There's some things,
11,500.
Madam Chairman
Yes.
and members of the council, we've been working with the number of personnel increases. There's 2 mechanics and 2 master mechanics. There's a formula that you use called the SEI, which determines based on the complexity of the equipment that you have as to how many mechanics you're supposed to have to support that. We've been running under that for the last 2 years. Our backlog of work orders to repair equipment is affected by that. I think because of the fuel situation that we've had, where fuel is, as you know, fuel is down, and tonight we're going to renew the fuel contract, is that there was enough funds in the budget to be able to cover the additional personnel requirements without having to go outside the budget. So within the fleet budget, within the management reserve, and within the underrun of the fuel projection for this year, I think we have enough to cover the fleet portion of the changes that we requested.
but how can you pay those folks if we have not
Well,
made the necessary
they
changes?
haven't been hired. The
Okay, they
people have not been hired.
So you would have to hold up on that.
Yeah, I'd have to hold up on the hiring of the 2 mechanics and the 2 master mechanics, and also some of the salary adjustments that we had in place for evening out some of the salaries and changing job descriptions on people For example, we have what's called, probably years ago, a lubrication specialist. These people are entry-level mechanics. We don't want them to go out and lube a piece of equipment in the field and not be able to change a fan belt because they're not a mechanic. So we would rather have entry-level mechanics that can do more than just go out, change oil, grease equipment, and get it back into service. So we're changing some job titles around to get the right mix of people that we need. According to the SEI, we've been underrunning for the past couple of years the number of mechanics at the minimum. I think the number was 15, and we run actually 7 mechanics. In the old days, I guess, mechanics was, everybody in fleet was a mechanic. If you had 15 people, 14 of them were mechanics, and 1 was a supervisor. Well, nowadays, with all of the fuel monitoring, all of the things that go on with the lubrication, preventive maintenance, and the technology of the vehicles, alignment systems and those kind of things, you've increased the qualifications of the mechanic from a guy that works under a tree to a guy that can actually use a computer, do diagnostics and that kind of thing. So we're trying to bring those kind of people on board.
I'll second the motion that Mr. Johnson has out there.
So if there's any way possible that the fleets could get approved so we could go ahead, it would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, we can add that in. I mean, whatever.
Well, wait, hang on a minute, because there's a couple of other areas that I would like to hear some explanation for and some impact on. Under the planning department, there is I think what is a similar situation to fleet. Ricky, would you like to address that, please?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. As y'all may or may not be aware, development is booming in Ascension Parish, and our budget amendment is to hire another building inspector with feet on the ground and a vehicle to move that person around and an iPad so they can do their inspections. We lost an inspector because he got promoted into another position, and so we are replacing him. We're replacing his vehicle. We're replacing his iPad. So the cost that we are incurring is just trying to keep up.
He left with his vehicle?
Yeah, that's
I have no comment.
Well, I don't understand why you have to have an addition to the budget if you already had somebody doing that job.
So the part of that salary was to hire a new person, which you guys had budgeted for last year, but the administration had not included all the other pieces and parts, his vehicle, the other pieces. We don't believe we're going to need all of the salary that we're asking for because we were going after a fully certified building inspector, somebody who was a CBO. So we had put top dollar in there because we were trying to get somebody with all the qualifications. He wouldn't come for the money we were offering, so we're going back to an entry-level guy. So that money's going to be lower. I can't tell you what it is right this second, but we didn't want to slow down the budget amendment process by tweaking it. So it will be amended down when we come back later on this year.
You know, I got lost in that somewhere. You had somebody doing it. That's what I understood. You had somebody doing the job now. He quit and somebody else is coming. So you had a budget and now you have to add to the budget.
What else do we have?
Yes, sir. So under the salary portion, the $23,500 that's listed was to pay for the additional salary for a person who had more qualifications.
Okay.
That number is likely going to go down when we hire an entry-level guy who doesn't cost as much money.
And then there's $49,000 for a vehicle?
That's for 2 vehicles.
This guy's gonna drive 2?
No, I hired a guy at the end of last year, beginning of this year, who did not have a vehicle.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Lawler?
I believe, I've heard that we seem to have a glut of vehicles. Why are we purchasing more vehicles if we've got a glut of vehicles that we can transfer?
That's a fleet question. I asked for vehicles, and Mr. Depew gave me one that he had ordered, and that's what the new guy who was hired January 3rd is currently driving, but I don't have money to pay for that vehicle, so this is able to compensate the fleet department. I don't have another vehicle in my department, so I need one. I don't know that there's a pool of vehicles out there that have less than 100,000 miles that a building inspector can put 100,000 miles on over the next couple of years that are suitable, but I'll defer to Bill.
Let me give you I guess it's like any argument depending on who your boss is, you take which side, okay? And in a lot of cases last year, and our approach prior to this new parish president is that we have an emergency requirement, that we have vehicles that in a commercial world you would not be able to justify. I would be outsourcing a lowboy. I'd be outsourcing a bulldozer because I would use it on the job. When I'm through with it, I would put it back. Because of the emergency nature of having to have this stuff on hand, and as you know, in the middle of a hurricane, we're not going to get a lowboy, we're not going to get a bulldozer, we're not going to get those trucks that carry those crews around to cut the tree limbs and clear the roads. So we probably have, on the basis of equipment and trucks and work trucks, probably more than a normal commercial business would due to that fact. That was that argument. Then this year the argument is, if we're going to have a hurricane, we're probably going to get a week's notice to be able to do that. So bringing the trucks in from take-home vehicles, and Mr. Matassa has asked me to take a look at it. It looks like we can reduce about 30 take-home vehicles in a very short period of time. We've gone to a pool concept where we're going to locate 3 pool vehicles at the new glass house, as we call it. We'll have 3 pool vehicles of a different nature. One will be a sedan, one will be an SUV that's good and reliable that people can sign out on a daily basis like a rental car. We're going to put one over on the west side that will be a utility vehicle that they can use whenever their vehicle is down or in the shop. We've been getting out of the lease program. For those of you that were familiar with the lease program, in 2013 we purchased no vehicles to replace any of the lease vehicles because we were in the transition of going to a lease to purchase. We're now in a full purchase mode. For example, drainage this year has 6 vehicles that they have budget approved for. They will be turning in some Dodges that are 4x4 Dodges that we intend to transfer to engineering. It's kind of like the big brother concept. You know, if you got stuff that's usable, we move it down to the other departments. We're looking at some other alternative ways to get people transported around. We've even talked to drainage about possibly crew buses to take some of the cutting crews out to the area and cut down on the number. But the vehicles don't go away overnight. I mean, you've paid for them. You don't want to sell them in an auction, which is the only way we can get rid of them because of state law. And that's not the most efficient way to get rid of them. If we could keep them and have a reseller resell them for us, we could probably get more on them. But we're juggling vehicles right now. Fleet has never bought all of the vehicles. So there's been some disconnect on this department buying vehicles while this department's buying vehicles when I'm planning on putting this vehicle over here. So you got to manage the fleet as an entire entity. And the goal is to reduce 30 take-home vehicles out of the 70 that we have take-homes. Now, the rationale or the argument for a take-home vehicle, if it benefits the parish. For example, the mosquito trucks, they start spraying from their location. So having them come all the way back to the yard to pick up their truck so that they can go back where they were to spray, it's better for the parish to have them take those vehicles home. Some of our sign crews that get called out in the middle of the night, or our exempt employees like myself. If I get called out in the middle of the night, I'm on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I go wherever they want me to go. We're trying to cut down on the number of those. We're trying to standardize the fleet. We're buying crew cabs. Instead of having a pickup truck that this group can't use, but they could use a crew cab, worst case scenario is a crew cab, and you may be driving a crew cab with no passengers. But we're trying to utilize and cut down on the total number of vehicles. Right now, when I started, we had 480 back work orders on vehicles and equipment and things that were broke. We're now averaging about 38 work orders that are backlogged, and most of those are awaiting parts.
Does Ricky have a big brother that could hand him a vehicle?
Well, actually, he did. I had in the fleet budget, there was a new vehicle to replace my lease vehicle, and I consider all the fleet vehicles belong to the other departments if they need them more than we do. And we look at all of our departments as our customers. I don't have any external customers. The fleet has all internal customers. I have to satisfy Bill Rue and drainage, I have to satisfy the west side, and those are my customers. So we try to get them what they need to do the job, and we have a form that they have to provide justification for. We evaluate that justification. A lot of the jobs with the inspectors call for a dedicated vehicle, whether they take it home or don't take it home. But by taking, like Mr. Robert said, by leaving it at the yard and picking up the yard, we reduce our liability because you're not exposed to the yard and that kind of thing. So we are looking at significantly reducing the number of take-home vehicles. the yard vehicles and the ability, some people go out and use a vehicle for one day. When we put a vehicle in the shop and have to send it out to a vendor, you have to have a special kind of vehicle that they can use during that time. If it's a crew truck, you have to find them a crew truck and get a crew truck. So there's a different approach now to the fleet, and the total goal is to reduce the number of equipment by doing required equipment. We're doing better preventing maintenance that is causing less downtime on the vehicles. And we are having tried to take the older vehicles that still have, mileage doesn't judge the life of a vehicle anymore. It used to be a vehicle get 100,000 miles on it, it was time to auction off and sell it because it was old. But nowadays, you can get 125, 140 miles, 1,000 miles out of a vehicle pretty easily if you take care of it and you do preventive maintenance. So that's where we are on the vehicles. Is there any specific questions about the process we're doing on justifying the vehicles? We've gone in and identified all of our vehicles as what's critical. And if you'll notice on the vehicles, they'll have a triangle on the windshield. If it's a vehicle that's used during a hurricane operation, it'll have a 1. That means if there's other vehicles in the shop being worked on, then we'll put those vehicles out of the shop, bring that one in, get it repaired, get it back in service, and then start working the lower priority vehicles. So we prioritize the vehicles.
Mr. DePue, can I interrupt you?
Ma'am?
We have to get back to the agenda item.
Okay.
And I would love, and I think everyone here would
Okay.
enjoy, having a full report on an agenda from the Fleet Department about how you're going to do all this. I mean, it's fascinating stuff. But at the same time, it's not relevant to this agenda.
Okay.
And so we need to get back to this agenda. And the item that we are concerned about now is this budget amendment. Mr. Johnson, I think, but thank you so much.
Okay, and the vehicle he has is, when his money comes in, we're gonna replace that vehicle. So the person does justify a vehicle that he hired, needs a vehicle, a dedicated vehicle.
Okay. All right, Mr. Johnson.
Okay, I'll take a shot at this. Motion to approve the budget amendment minus the General Administration Department's expenditure for $1 million. The Purchasing Department to create a new department, Finance Department to remove expenditures for new Purchasing Department, as well as the Recreation Fund for the transfer out $417,000.
Excuse me one second, Councilman, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Yes.
We need to talk about this expenditure of the highway sewer 4273, that $1,259,000. We need to get this in there.
We were going to include that.
That's
Oh,
it.
y'all
That's
got that included?
We
Y'all-
only have,
okay.
from the earliest discussion of this, I requested that we remove the General Administration Department expenditures of $1 million.
Okay.
The two departments, Purchasing Department to create a new department, Finance Department to create a new department, and the and we added the Park Construction Fund under Mr. Turner.
And that's it. Everything
And
else is
that's
in.
it.
Everything else is in.
Good, good.
Okay.
Thank you.
So everything else is in.
Thank you.
And so, Mr. Johnson, I have that motion. Thank you so much. Do we have a second? I have a second from Councilman Kluwat. Do we have any questions?
I just have a question. I don't
Mr.
understand why we need additional vehicles if we've got too many vehicles already.
It's not about the vehicle. It is about the budget requirement and the way the money is moved around from one department to the other. So we are amending the budget to allow Mr. Compton to purchase a vehicle that at some point Fleet will
I
reimburse
understand
him.
now. I got you now.
Okay. All right. Any further questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. All right, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate all the hard work that the members of this commission are doing tonight. Thank you so much, and the department heads and the parish president who are working hard to make sure we stay on track, and our attorney too. Thank you, O'Neill. All right, item number 14, the sales and use tax report. Ms. Gwen.
Yes, ma'am. You have before you your regular sales and use tax report. This is actually the last report that will go on the books for the year 2015. It's going to be accrued back to December. It represents collections in December that were based on November sales. You can see each taxing district's December collections were down, and that's mainly due to, because of an audit in December of 14 that was almost $3 million, and I'm talking about the year to date, actually. The significant payments from the west side in the petrochemical industry and also in the east side. So if you look at the budget, This is completing the 2015 budget. You can see at 100%, the East Ascension drainage was over almost 12%. The 1-cent sales tax was over about 7.6%, and the half-cent sales tax was over the budget 15%. On page 2 is the yearly, January through December, in their consumer retail was up 8.69%, motor vehicles 5.83%, business to business was down 16.7%, and the petrochemical industry and their major suppliers was up 2.21% over year 14. And the pie chart on the third page, you can see that the petrochemical industry and their major suppliers had the total collections at 57% of all collections for the year, and consumer retail was 27%, motor vehicles 10%, and business to business 1 million, or either 6%. And on the last page is a history report, and you see there's no red lines left. This is the total year, and you can judge clearly how 2015 was just about even with 2014 and 2013 and East Ascension drainage, and higher in the 1-cent sales tax, and also in sales tax district number 2. And of course, that was due to the large over $2 billion expansion on the west side of the river. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
I have one question from Mr. Dawson.
Ms. LeBlanc, I want to repeat again what I said the last time, and I think this is an example of this, that, we've gotten a lot of sales tax money from the construction and the petrochemical industry, non-recurring income that is not flagged in any way, and that we're using that possibly on recurring expenses. So I'd like to, ask you guys if you would look at possibly flagging that as non-recurring income so we can identify this when we look at it.
Certainly will.
Thank you.
That would be helpful. Thank you, Bill. Any other questions? All right, we will move along to item number 15, the revenue and expenditure report. Ms. Amanda.
Good evening. Before you are the financial reports for the month of December 2015. Please note that this is not the final year-end report. We still have a lot of adjustments in journal entries and accruals to put on the books. That's not completed till probably the end of February before the actual year-end is closed. Page 1, revenues currently are at 94.43%. And page 2, expenditures are at 86.76% at 100% of the year. On page 3 are charts that compare the year-to-date revenue and expenditures for both operating and capital to the budget. Page 4 and 5 gives you a brief explanation of funds that are highlighted on page 1 and 2 that are under the budget for revenues or over the budget for expenditures by 5% or more. The last page reflects all checks issued in December over $100,000, and the total of these checks are $2,503,412. Once you review the report, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Gentlemen, do we have any questions? At this time, we thank you very much, Ms. Amanda. Item number 16, bid items. To accept the lowest responsive bid. Ms. Darrellan.
Regarding limestone grade 610 Mexican alternate, on December 1st, 2015, the purchasing department received one alternate bid for limestone grade 610 Mexican. The bid was received from South Louisiana Field Material. After review, the purchasing department and Department of Public Works recommend accepting the lowest responsive bid from South Louisiana Field Material and to authorize the parish president to enter into any applicable agreement or contract for this material.
Let me address that, Councilwoman.
Certainly, Mr. Barrington.
We bid out 610 limestone. There's two kinds of 610 limestone. There's gray and what they call Mexican. We received, this is not really an alternate. We received bids on all of them. We accepted the gray, and this was the other alternate, was not submitted as an alternate, so they protested when we gave the other one. So the way to resolve this is to award both, and that way there's no trouble. So it's not really an alternate. We have two types of limestone. Wherever they need it, any place, they can accept it, and these were the two. We'd already awarded one, and this is the low bid on this type of limestone.
Motion, Madam Chairman.
Have a motion by Councilman Todd Lambert,
Second.
second by Councilman Randy Cluott. Any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes.
Regarding automated fleet fuel system and supplier for on-site dispensing, off-site dispensing, and bulk deliveries. On January 13, 2016, the Purchasing Department received 2 bids for automated fleet fuel system and supplier for on-site dispensing, off-site dispensing, and bulk deliveries. The bids were received from Levine Oil Company and Roland J. Robert Distributor, Incorporated. After review, the Purchasing Department and Fleet Department recommend accepting the lowest responsive bid from Roland J. Robert Distributor, Incorporated, pending successful contract negotiations to authorize the parish president to enter into any applicable agreement or contract for this project.
Motion.
A motion by Councilman Councilman Randy Cluott, second by Councilman Todd Lambert. Any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes.
Regarding Fire District Number 3, Station 34 construction, on January 14, 2016, the Purchasing Department received 8 bids for Fire District Number 3, Station 34. The bids were received from Dumite Construction, Blunt General Contractors, Capital Construction, J. Reed Constructors, Expert Maintenance, Vincent Enterprises, Guy Hopkins Construction, and A&R Construction. After review, the Fire Department, Fire District Number 3, and Domain Architect recommend accepting the lowest responsive bid from A&R Construction, LLC, to authorize the parish president to enter into any applicable agreement or contract for this project.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Have a motion by Councilman Benny Johnson,
Second.
second by Councilman John Cagnalotti. Any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes.
Regarding dumpster rental, trash disposal, and recycling bins, on December 1st, 2016, the Purchasing Department received 2 proposals, dumpster rental, trash disposal, and recycling bins. The proposals were received from BFI Waste Services, LLC, and Innovative Waste Systems. After review, the Non-Engineering Selection Committee recommends accepting the proposal submitted by BFI Waste Services, LLC, and to authorize the parish president to enter into any applicable agreement or contract for this service.
Motion, Madam
Have a
Chairman.
motion by Councilman Todd Lambert, a second by Councilman Dempsey Lambert. Any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Before a motion to adjourn, I would like to thank everyone for their participation in tonight's meeting. I want to offer to the parish president our understanding that this is the first time in 8 years that we have had new leadership in that office, and so we know that it's going to be difficult to kind of get everything going for the first few Finance Committee meetings until we all work out what you want to present, what we expect to see. And so we look forward to having shorter meetings in the future. But at this point, I appreciate all the discussion that went on, and thank each of you for your attention to these issues.
Motion to adjourn, Madam
Second.
Chairman.
I have a motion by Councilman Johnson, and a second by Councilman Cluott. And we are out of here. Thank you, gentlemen.